Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you 5 of the best exercises that you can do in the gym. They're going to transfer to your running outside of the gym. This will not only leave you becoming faster, but it could also reduce the risk of injury if you perform these consistently. So we'll get straight into it with number 1. Okay, so before I actually say anything, I should caveat all of this by saying that 1 doesn't mean that I think this exercise is the best of the 5 that I'm talking about today. Equally, 5 doesn't mean that it's the worst, okay? It's just no particular order of exercises that will help you improve your running. So, number 1 is going to be split squats. Now, I'm not going to tie you down to a specific variation here because there's so many different ones. You've got Bulgarians, you've got front foot elevated, you've got barbell split squats, okay? It doesn't matter. I don't really mind as long as you're doing some single leg work specifically, okay? Now, why are we doing this? Well, let's use some common sense here. When we're running, how often are both feet on the floor? How often are you doing things with both your legs at the same time? Pretty much never, okay? So that's why single leg strength is really important. The main reason I like split squats is a really good way of addressing imbalances, because if we compare this to a box step up, I find that you can be a little bit more locked in when you're doing a split squat, which is going to allow you to focus on your weaker leg a little bit more, okay? Most of us will have imbalances. It's just what happens in life when you have a dominant side. So therefore, if you use me as an example, my right leg is stronger and my left leg is weaker. So I'm always going to start with my left leg on split squats first, okay? So if I'm doing, say, 8 reps each side, I'm going to do the left leg and then the right leg, just so I can really focus on the weaker leg and therefore trying to get as much performance out of that as I can, okay? So number 1 is split squats. Find a variation that you like. Personally, I recommend things like the Bulgarian split squat, just where we can have our torso angle a little bit forwards, because that's going to help us hit our glutes a little bit more. And glutes are really, really important when you run, as is the posterior chain, okay? So that's my preference. If you want a more quad focus, then become more upright in your torso. Either way, split squats, first exercise. Okay, so moving on now, you've just heard me talk about the importance of the posterior chain for running. Now, our lower body posterior chain, if you didn't know, means the back. So all that's going to be is your glutes, your hamstrings, and your calves, okay? Now, posterior chain, predominantly, especially in the hamstrings, which is what we're looking at here, is trained via hinge movements. Now, whenever I say hinge movement, everyone usually thinks of the deadlift, which is a hinge, but when purely training this movement pattern, the king of the hinge movements, in my opinion, is an RDL. Whether that's a dumbbell or a barbell, that's going to be personal preference. I prefer dumbbell, just because I have a better mind-muscle connection there, and I just like the feel of it as opposed to the barbell. Just because we're starting from that top position on an RDL, it just means that we're really focusing on the eccentric portion, which is just so important. With a deadlift, that usually gets a bit forgotten. And it also means throughout the movement, there's less tension when you do a deadlift from the floor as opposed to your RDL. So that's why I'm bringing in the RDL. Now, only note here, again, you can shift the focus depending on what you do. It all depends on the knee bend or the flexion in the knee. Now, if I'm going to take a slightly more straight leg approach, I'm going to be hitting more of my hamstrings, okay? But if I were to then take a slightly more bent knee approach, I'm going to be hitting the glutes a little bit more. Now, again, choose your focus based on you as an athlete, as a runner, okay? That's just how you adapt this exercise to slightly target the glutes more or slightly target the hamstrings more. Both muscles will do and play a part no matter which way you do it though. So don't worry too much, okay? So number 2, RDLs. Okay, so number 3, now there'd be no video talking about exercises for running if there wasn't some form of squat in there. But it's not going to be a back squat on this occasion. We're going to go for a front squat, okay? Now, why am I going for a front squat? Well, a lot of the exercises that I've spoken about are very posterior chain heavy, which is so important for running. But you can't neglect the anterior as well, which means the front, so the quads in this case. Now, we're going to do a front squat because when you load the weight anteriorly, so on the front of you, is essentially back squat, posterior back, front squat front, it's going to hit the quads a little bit more, okay? Just like a goblet squat would, okay? Both of those exercises will hit the quads more, just so it's not neglected. I also like the front squat because we need to keep a really strong upper back. Because if my elbows drop, then I'm going to go like this, the bar is going to be on the floor, okay? I really like the front squat because it forces us to have a nice strong upper back. When you're running, we want to keep our chest nice and big as well. What helps do that? Upper back. So all of these things make it really good. Again, front squat, similarly to our split squats earlier, can really be good for core as well, because we really have to hold a nice stable position where we have a lot of weight on it, okay? If you can't do a front squat for whatever reasons, you can either use the strap approach, where you wrap some straps around and use those to yank your elbows up. Equally, you can do a goblet squat instead if it's really that bad. Either or, there's plenty of front-loaded variations of a squat there for you. So, number 3 we're going through, front squat. Okay, so moving on to number 4. This is the first exercise where we're not thinking about how much we can lift, but we're thinking about how fast we can move. We're doing what we call a low-level plyometric called the pogos. Now, if you see my running warm-up video, you know that I love the pogos as a primer for running, but you want to be doing these at least twice a week, so therefore I'm including them in these 5 best exercises also, okay? Now, why pogos are not a box jump like a lot of people suggest? Box jumps are not plyometrics. So box jumps are more of a ballistic dynamic movement because the ground contact time is simply too long, and also we're thinking about the stretch shortening cycle here. Now, what the fuck is the stretch shortening cycle? Well, we're talking about the calves in particular, and we can improve this by doing our pogos, which is going to give us the result of having a faster contraction speed, okay? I'm not even going to go into too much technical detail with you about what it is. All you need to know is that we're trying to train the stretch shortening cycle. That's going to give us a quicker contraction speed, okay? All we're going to say for now. What is the benefits of having a quicker contraction speed? Think about the transition when you're running, okay? When my foot hits the floor, I want to get, we'll use the example of being a heel striker, but it's the same regardless. You want to get from your heel or your midfoot or whatever to pushing off the toes as quickly as possible, okay? Even if you're a forefoot striker, it still applies to you. Quick contraction speed means you can get off the floor quicker. If you can get off the floor quicker, it means you can have a higher cadence. It means you'll literally run faster, okay? Why the pogos good as well? Stronger Achilles tendons. Strong tendons are good because we're going to increase the longevity of your running career by hopefully reducing injury there. Think of the Achilles, so much repetitive strain goes through that, okay? So, pogos over box jumps. If you're going to do one, choose the pogos. Box jumps have a place, not for this, not for improving the stretch shortening cycle, which is so important. Again, we're linking in the posterior chain. I've mentioned it before, glutes, hamstrings, now calves, okay? All of this is really important. It ties together. An imbalance in one or neglecting one of these things can impact the other. Like you may have heard before, if you have an ankle or knee issue, the knees, ankles, and hips are so closely bound together, especially when it comes to running and injuries, okay? So do not neglect this. There's your pogos. Let's move on to our final exercise. Okay, so this final exercise you may well have not seen before. It's called a cable hip drive. Now, why is this good? Well, again, we're going to apply some common sense like we did on the split squat. Think about the movement of running. If we can get our hip flexors nice and strong, because that's what we're targeting here, and if we can drive that knee through and be really strong in that movement, there's so much repetitive strain of that movement when we run, there can be no downside to this. It can also, if you're loading this heavy, it can also really challenge you from a stability point of view. And this is one of the reasons that you might be surprised to not see any core exercises in this list. That is because, if performed correctly, all of these exercises should give you ample core strength. And as a complete minimum, which is what this video is, 5 exercises. If you do this bare minimum, I need to cover all bases. And I think that core is more of a additional, almost a luxury to add on to this, as opposed to something that you should be doing in isolation over these exercises, okay? With the cable hip drive, you can either use a band, but I like the cable just for the potential of progressive overload by upping the weight. So what you're going to do, I'd use a cuff around the ankle. All we're then going to do, I like to go opposite arms like I would be running. So if I'm driving my right knee, my left arm's going to start up. And then you're just driving the knee in front of you, looking to try and keep the standing leg as straight as possible. And then there you go, you should feel it in hip flexors. Okay then, so that brings us to the end of another video. You've got 5 of the best exercises to improve your running. Now, as I say, I've been maybe a little vague and I haven't given you some specific variations, especially on the split squat. But these are the types of movement patterns you need to be training if you run. If you do nothing else, then do these 5 exercises. I would definitely recommend more. You can easily have subbed in some other exercises. There's so many good ones for you, but these are what I think are the ones that you're going to get the most bang for your buck for at this moment, okay? So, if you like the video, obviously, drop a like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you all soon. we're starting to get some really good running content out there. So before long, you have a complete library on this channel of how to up your running game, okay? Now, if you're looking to get some advice on the gym and how you should train from a strength and conditioning point of view for running or any other sport that you do, then hit the link in the description, book a consultation with me. It's completely free, and then I will talk you through exactly a plan on how we can make you go from where you are now to where you want to be. So that's it for this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.